Lena had always been fascinated by the unknown, the eerie, and the unexplainable. So, when she heard about the Midnight Club, an underground gathering of horror enthusiasts, she couldn't resist. The club was infamous, with rumors swirling about the bizarre activities that took place within its darkened walls. But for Lena, the thrill of the unknown was irresistible. One chilly Friday evening, she arrived at the club's hidden location, an abandoned building on the edge of town, its windows boarded up. The address had been whispered to her by a fellow horror fan she met online, and after much hesitation, she finally decided to check it out. The door creaked as she pushed it open, and the thick smell of mildew and decay hit her instantly. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, thick with anticipation, and something more sinister. The room was dimly lit by a single flickering chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Shadows danced across the walls, casting long, unnatural shapes. Around her, a dozen or so people in dark, gothic attire sat in a circle. Their faces were hidden in the gloom, but their eyes gleamed with excitement. Lena hesitated, unsure if she had made the right choice. But her curiosity pushed her forward. A man, tall and gaunt with pale skin, stood at the center of the circle. His voice was low, almost hypnotic, as he spoke. "Welcome to the Midnight Club," he said, his lips curling into a twisted smile. "Tonight, we will not simply tell stories. Tonight, we will live them." Lena felt a shiver crawl up her spine. She thought it was all part of the act, maybe some elaborate role play, but the way the other members watched her made her uneasy. The man continued, "The club has a tradition. Each of you must share a fear, something deep, something real. We will face it together, and once it's done, you will leave with a gift if you survive." Lena chuckled nervously. She had come for a thrill, but this? It felt different, darker, but she wasn't going to back out now. Everyone else seemed to be eagerly awaiting their turn, so she sat down and prepared herself for whatever came next. One by one, the members took their turn. A woman with long black hair and a porcelain mask spoke of her fear of drowning. Another man, trembling, admitted he feared being trapped in a small space. Each fear seemed more ridiculous than the last, but as the night wore on, Lena's skepticism began to fade. The air grew heavier, colder, and the shadows seemed to press in around them. Then, it was her turn. Lena stood up, trying to steady her breathing. "I'm afraid of losing control," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of not knowing what's real and what's not." The man at the center of the circle smiled, and his eyes gleamed with something that made Lena's stomach twist. "An interesting choice," he said, almost to himself. "Now, Lena, close your eyes." Without thinking, she obeyed. The room fell silent, and for a moment, she thought she heard whispers, voices too soft to make out, but undeniably close. Her heart began to race. "Open your eyes," the man commanded. Lena did, and the world around her had changed. The room was gone. In its place, there was nothing but an endless black void. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. She reached out, but her hands met only cold air. Panic surged through her, and her mind began to fracture. She could see faces, blurred and distorted, swirling around her. They were screaming, begging for release, but Lena couldn't understand them. "Help!" she cried, but it was like her voice was trapped in a vacuum. The man's voice echoed from all around her. "You wanted to face your fear. Welcome to the nightmare." Suddenly, the darkness parted, and Lena was back in the room, her body trembling, her skin drenched in sweat. The others stared at her, their faces expressionless. The man smiled again, but this time it was not the comforting smile she had seen before. It was cold, almost predatory. "You face your fear, Lena," he said softly, his words a chilling promise. But the Midnight Club always takes something in return. Lena stumbled backward, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she gasped. The man's eyes gleamed with dark satisfaction. "You'll see soon enough." As she made her way out of the building, she noticed something strange. The streets were empty, too empty. The world outside felt off, as though it wasn't real anymore. She looked at her reflection in a nearby store window, and for a brief moment, she didn't recognize herself. The Midnight Club had given her a gift, but it was one she would never be able to escape.